Morning. This is February the 20th, 2005. I'm Alan Brzezinski, Commander of American Legion Post 72, Lamory Hackett in Saugerties, New York, and we have Mr. Bill Payne, who we are interviewing for the ongoing Smithsonian Veterans History Project. Okay, for the record there, were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted for 2 years. It was a 2-year enlistment in the Marine Corps at that time. Okay. Usually the Marine Corps only takes volunteers, but they had actually started drafting for the Marine Corps. So I figured I'd enlisted in the Marine Corps for 2 years. And so I enlisted.
You were living where?
I lived in Astoria, Queens, New York. I was going to college in Brooklyn, Long Island University. And there was a recruiter right across the avenue, Flatbush Avenue. It was like a trailer, a recruiting post. And the guy who was the recruiter used to go to this bar called Dodger's Bar. You know, in 1968, he wasn't doing that much business around university recruiting people into the Marine Corps, as you probably could imagine. So he used to go to this bar, and I did too. And so I was in the bar there, and I kind of decided I wanted to join the Marine Corps. So I went up to this man. He was all dressed in dress blues, very impressive. And I said to him, he was sitting at the bar, I said, I was thinking about joining the Marine Corps. And he swung around in his chair, and he said, "Raise your right hand, son." But there was a little more paperwork involved beyond that. But the point was, he was pretty eager for recruits.
Mm-hmm. So you remember your first days when you were in the Marines?
Yeah, first we went to Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. I remember leaving my family's apartment in Queens. I was 21, and it was still dark. And I remember really realizing that I was leaving home. You know, I'd always lived at home up to that point. I didn't go away to college. I lived in the apartment and used to take a subway and a bus to college every day. So it was like I really felt like I was really going away. Mm-hmm. And so I took they gave you a subway token. They sent you a little notice telling you to report, and they sent you one subway token so you didn't have any excuse for not getting it. And so I reported to Fort Hamilton, and it was in October. And from there we took a bus to Penn Station, and we got on a train, and we went all the way down to the south. And even though it was October, it was real hot down there. So when I got to Paris Island, of course, they get you there in the middle of the night. Well, in my case it was. And it was a whole new world. You know, people yelling at you, shoving you around, definitely different. My memory was the same. What did I get myself into? Yeah, really.
Do you remember any of your drill instructors?
Yeah, I remember all of them. One is drill instructor Hall, he was from Pennsylvania. And the other one was drill instructor Sanders, and he was from Florida. And the other one was Corporal Smith, and he was also from Pennsylvania. And they were all extremely tough guys, needless to say.
Yeah,
but they did encourage you to get the job done. You know, they didn't. They wanted you to succeed. You know? They weren't going to make it easy for you, but they encouraged you.
Yours was how long was yours? I know the Marines is usually like.
Well, boot camp at that time had been cut down to something like 8 weeks. But when I got there, I spent 4 years in college training on beer and pizza. You know, I don't drink anymore, but I did then a lot. And so I wasn't in the best of physical shape when I got down there. So before regular boot camp, they sent me out to what they called Special Training Branch, which was known actually as the Fat Farm. So that's where you went to get rid of some weight. Or if you were too skinny, like some of these kids were, they went there to put on weight. And I don't know what's more sad, to see fat guys not being allowed to eat or skinny guys being forced to eat, but it was pretty unpleasant either way. And out there they also had people who couldn't shoot straight, so they gave them extra special training. And then they had a group called Proficiency Platoon for people who weren't doing very well academically, put it that way. They had a real hard time passing the academic tests that they had. So I spent some time out there, and basically the Marine Corps always overdoes everything. So I lost 40 pounds in 40 days. So that's what you call living on, pretty much on hard-boiled eggs and lettuce and other kinds of rabbit food, and running a lot. So it worked. I come back to regular training after that. Yeah.
So you went off to Vietnam. Did you go off to Vietnam after that? You went to a school, a Class A school?
I went what they call on-the-job training. They sent me to, first after Paris Island boot camp in South Carolina, they sent us to Camp Gardiner, which is part of Camp Lejeune for infantry training. And so we'd already learned how to shoot the M14. We got a little bit of training in the M16, which is what they were using in Vietnam at that time. And also how to shoot the grenade launcher and tactics and how to crawl through the mud, things like that, if you hadn't already learned, how to get under barbed wire with machine guns firing over you. Real machine guns. They were World War II type machine guns with water jackets on them, so I could shoot all day without overheating, and things like that. So when I got done with that, then they sent me to what they call Mainside Camp Lejeune, and my MOS was going to be computers, because I had worked for the city of New York doing computers back then. So some of the computers I worked on in those days are today, literally, in the Smithsonian Institution, because they're antiques, but that's what I was going to work on. I had picked the Marine Corps to join, by the way, because I was always interested in military history, and I'd lived up here for quite a bit, and I hunted, shot and all that, shot guns and everything, but I really knew I didn't know anything about how to fight in a war. I didn't know that at all. So I figured if I had to go, at that time there were a lot of people being drafted into the Army, and I didn't know that they were, from what I had heard, they weren't all getting the best possible training. So I figured if I'm going to be going to a combat zone, I knew the Marine Corps had really good training. And my cousin who lived across the hall, he was a veteran of Battle of Iwo Jima, and I was always impressed. I was impressed. My dad was in the Army. I was impressed when anybody served in the military, but I really thought I should get the best possible training.
With the Marines.
So I went with the Marine Corps.
So after you went to that training, did they send you to Vietnam after that, or they?
Yeah, I went to on-the-job training at Camp Lejeune, and I was there for not a very long time. I enlisted in like July of '68. I went on active duty in October of '68. I got out of boot camp probably in January of '69. I got done with Camp Gardiner, I think, in February. I went to Camp Lejeune. I got home for some leave. I got back down to Camp Lejeune, and then there was the Army called it a levy. They needed about eight guys to go to Vietnam. So that was it. I got my orders for Vietnam, and I think I got my orders for Vietnam probably in May. I got home on a little leave, and then from there, from home, from New York, I flew to Camp Pendleton, California, for jungle training. So I had jungle training out in the hills of California. That was real interesting, climbing up and down the hills. And it was June, so it was pretty hot. And then we went to Disneyland. I always knew about Disneyland since I was a little kid, but I'd never been there, so that was kind of fun. And then we flew across the Pacific, landed at Hawaii in the middle of the night, and they wouldn't let us off the plane, so that was a wasted trip. And from there we went to Okinawa. So we stayed on Okinawa for probably maybe a week at the most, and then they flew us each individually over to Da Nang in Vietnam, which was in the northern part of South Vietnam. It was a big harbor, a gigantic Air Force base, and there was a Marine aviation base there too. And I had gotten orders for aviation, which was, I actually credit this one sergeant in Camp Lejeune. You think that the big decisions are made by generals, but they're usually, this was corporal, actually made by corporals. His name was Corporal Sagan, remember that? And I had met him one time in our club, which was for privates, PFCs, and lance corporals. And he was a corporal, so he actually didn't belong in there. But he was a very tough guy from Brooklyn, and not very friendly or anything, But when I was standing there getting a hot dog or something, he says, "You sound like you're from New York." So I said, "Well, yeah, I am, So he says, "No, how about that? Me too." And that was the extent of it. So when he got called that there needed 8 guys to go to Vietnam, all 8 of us crowded into his little office that he had. And he said, "I need 4 guys for the ground and 4 guys for the air. So what do you want?" Well, the whole time I've been in the Marine Corps, nobody had ever asked me what I wanted to do. And I wasn't in very when I didn't know. I didn't know what to say because I knew nothing. And he says, "Payne, I'll put you down for the air." So I wound up going to the air wing instead of to the ground. And so even to this day, I say a little Hail Mary for Corporal Sagan. I think he was Jewish, but I don't think the Hail Mary, make any difference. He really did me a big favor. I found out the year I was there, being in the air wing was a whole lot better. Of all 8 of us that went over there, I was the only one that finished a year there. The other guys came back for various sundry reasons. They got injured, stuff like that. One guy's mom he was from the South someplace, and you wouldn't think this would happen, but by that time the Vietnam War had become quote-unquote unpopular, And this fellow, he was from Tennessee, I think. His mom went to a complete depression out of fear that he was over there. So they actually let him come home. They actually sent him home because the lady was losing her mind over him being over there. So anyway, we went to Okinawa, and then from there we flew into Da Nang, and we landed at night. And they had always psyched everybody up. Says the place is always under attack, and when you get there, you'll be ushered into a bunker. And that was all just to scare you. The place wasn't always under attack. I was there for a year. It happened occasionally. But that particular night, it was under attack when we landed. We landed in the enemy was shooting these 122 millimeter rockets from about 4 or 5 miles away, and they were landing on the at the edge of the airstrip when we came in. Not that I actually saw them blowing up, but they hustled us off the airplane in a big hurry. This is nothing worse than having 200 or 300 people on an airplane that gets hit by a rocket, you know. They put us on a truck. And I remember there was flares in the sky, our flares, you know, lighting up the whole area, you know, so you'd be able to see the bad guys. So anyway, that's it. So they took us to a place that was called the R&R Center. We kind of milled around and we got some food. And they had trained us to be so cautious of the Vietnamese people that, you know, they pretty much told us that South Vietnam was our ally. However, you know, there was a lot of people in South Vietnam who were not our allies, you know, the Viet Cong and all that. So the Marine Corps had us so psyched up that I was astounded to find out that there were Vietnamese people working in our mess hall, you know, feeding us, you know, food. These people will poison us, you know. And sometimes things like that apparently did happen, but while the year I was there, I come to find out that our presence in Vietnam was a big economic boost, you know, for these people. These folks didn't have a lot, so we hired a lot of their people to work for us, you know, and so it put money into their economy. And the vast majority weren't out to hurt us. I later found out that most of the people that worked in the area had been pretty carefully screened, and all of them had something against the communists, you know, like their father had been murdered by the communists, or their family had been wiped out by the communists, or whatever. Most of them had been brought from other parts of the country where they'd been under attack by the enemy, so they were on our side, for the most part. So.
Yeah, at that time, it was mostly North Vietnamese than the Viet Cong.
Yeah, this was after the Tet 68 offensive when the Viet Cong was more or less wiped out. So, especially where I was, we were in the Northern Tactical Zone, which was on the border, the border of North Vietnam. So anyway, yeah, it was a whole change of lifestyle. And I went to after this R&R Center, they put us on a truck and sent us, where we were going to work. And what I remembered the most was that we went by what was called a sick bay, where our Navy medical people were, because the Marine Corps has got Navy medics. And they were Quonset huts, And this one, we stopped in front of it for a minute, and there was a big sign there, red with yellow letters on it, and said, in case of disaster, stack dead to the left and wounded to the right. And I went, dead to the left, wounded to the right. So I guess it dawned on me that this was a killing zone. It was a combat zone where people were actually getting killed.
So no one was taking any prisoners, none of our people were taking prisoners there, were they? Any Marines?
Oh, there were people taken prisoner. I mean, I wasn't one of them, thank God. But yeah, that would happen. Actually, there was limits on to where you could travel around unless you were with a unit. That only made sense. There were occasions when people would decide to wander out and go look for some kind of entertainment, let's say, and they would wind up either getting killed or captured, in the process. I mean, it's definitely death by misadventure. So.
Did you keep in touch with your family back here?
Yeah, oh yeah, I did. I wrote back and forth to my mom and my father, and there came a time there when I was first over there, and I guess the first 30 days or so, and I was kind of like getting acclimated to this, and this is probably the time that they're very much worried about you, and I guess I had let it go, and I hadn't written in a while. So my father mentioned this to my cousin Maureen, who was known as Big Mo in the family. She's a big, kind of aggressive lady, and she actually called the Red Cross to find out why I wasn't writing letters. So I got a call from our lieutenant, second lieutenant, and said, "Private Payne, I don't like getting letters from the Red Cross. You will write to your family. Start doing it right away." So I did that, and my folks would send me stuff if we could get it, like canned turkey and canned corned beef. And I'd gone on a trip to Ireland before I went into service, and I brought back a bottle of Irish whiskey. And my mom, actually, for St. Patrick's Day, 1970, my mom was able to send this bottle of Irish whiskey over, and she packed it in popcorn. And it actually made it all the way over there without getting broke. So I shared it with all the guys in the outfit. So the whiskey kind of went around once, and we ate the popcorn at the same time. So there's a bottle of whiskey that got from Ireland to New York, or from New York to Vietnam, and broke. Pretty amazing.
Anything you did for good luck there, or was?
Yeah, I actually I went to church every chance I got.
Yes.
Which we had chaplains, and we could go to church just about every Sunday, and I did. And my grandma had given me a miraculous medal, Unfortunately, I lost that when we were having a rocket attack. I was in a big hurry getting into the bunker, and I had it on the same chain with my dog tags. and it got, yanked and broke, and I never found it again. It was all sand and everything, so who knows?
No atheists in foxholes.
Not this guy.
So, did you ever have any entertainments, any USO shows came down?
Matter of fact, we did. We had the USO was over there. There were two big buildings. One was at China Beach, which they later made a TV series about. And I said to somebody, I said, "Oh, I was at China Beach." They go, "There really was such a place?" There was. It was called the Riviera of Vietnam. The French had it was a colony, and they had chateaus built, wealthy, and so the wealthy Vietnamese and Americans still had it. But we had an R&R center where you could go there. The only problem with the beach was that they had sharks and poisonous sea snakes, so that if they sighted sharks, they'd fly over with a helicopter and shoot a few of them, and then the other ones would eat those, and then in about an hour it was okay to go in the water. But it was so hot and nasty over there that you really wanted to get in the water and cool off, sharks or no sharks. So there's another big USO called the Golden Gate, and they would have shows, pretty occasionally. They had bands from like Malaysia and places like that, and they were all very good at doing imitations of American groups. They would do like the Temptations, and they would do like Ray Charles, the late Ray Charles, who just died lately. They were very good at it, And then at Christmas in 1969, we had Bob Hope came over. We had the Bob Hope show, and that was very enjoyable. It was great. We were up on. It was at a place called Freedom Hill, and they had built like bleachers down below, but you couldn't get in there unless you got there, real early. You were an officer or something. So we went all up the side of the mountain, so we were seeing him from far, far away. But we borrowed the captain's binoculars, so we passed them around, and we got a good look at him. He flew in with a helicopter from the 101st Airborne because he was up at Camp Eagle for the morning show. And Bob Hope was a hard-working guy, so here he landed, in the afternoon of Da Nang, and he gave us a big show. We had an Amtrak, which was an armored amphibious vehicle, and they had painted the whole thing white and red. And they had Santa Claus up on top. Probably cost the government like a small fortune. They had to paint it back, camouflage like the next day. Things you do to entertain. So he was very good. He was really funny. He got off this big Chinook helicopter, with machine gun sticking out from the 101st Airborne, and he gets off with a golf club, waves it at everybody. And that guy who was flying that chopper, I'll never forget, we're up on top of the side of the mountain, right? So to show he could do it, the Army officer flying the helicopter made the thing go like an elevator straight up, just about, in about a second. And I can still picture that door gunner waving at us, we're all screaming, "You high!" Giving him a big hello. So that was really quite a big show. And also we brought along that time was Neil Armstrong, who had actually landed on the moon the previous July, that same year. And when he arrived, people went completely crazy. Just at the end of the show, he just brought him out. And he was dressed in a naval aviator's flight suit, because, Neil Armstrong was a naval aviator. And they brought him out, people went nuts. And all the guys from Ohio, and I served with a few of them from Ohio, like this guy, Stu Newberry, he was from Cincinnati, and man, they lined up to get Armstrong's autograph especially. And he did, he signed autographs for everybody that was there. That was really great. Then we had Cardinal Cook the next day, who was a Catholic cardinal from New York, who said Mass for us. And I got to meet him too.
Did you ever go to anywhere else, like Bangkok or down to Australia or something?
Well, because we were in the aviation, we had a lot of aircraft, which is always a nice thing to have. And, so I had an actual official R&R. You had to be there for 6 months. So I went to Bangkok, which was beautiful. People were very nice, very friendly. And they were supporting our war effort, too. They had an elite unit of infantry called the Queen's Cobras, because they have a kingdom, the king and the queen. The king is still the same king now as they had then. He's the longest reigning king in Asia. He's been around a while. So anyway, although his grandson just got killed in the tsunami over there. Pretty amazing, huh? Yeah, really, it's incredible. His grandson's half American, half, Thai. Boomy Ball is the family name, and he actually got killed in the tsunami. That's what it says. So anyway, they were so Bangkok was a beautiful place, and we flew there on a regular Pan Am jet. Landed and spent 5 days. We came back. I got to see all the temples and all of that. Really fabulous. And but then because we had all these airplanes, every so often the colonel decided he wanted to take a trip. And he was very nice about it. He would send down the word to all the squadrons, send me 3 privates and 2 lance corporals and 4 corporals who were behaving themselves. You had to have $200. You had to have $200. There was a list, and if you screwed up, they took you off the list, put you at the bottom again. But if you, as long as you behaved yourself, And I never got caught doing anything I wasn't supposed to be doing. Never got caught. So anyway, you'd work your way up on the list. So. You had to have $200, and you had to have a Class A uniform, a tropical uniform, not camouflage. So I had that. So the first trip we made was to the Philippines. We went to Subic Bay in the Philippines. I got to spend a few days there. Actually, I felt safer in Vietnam. This particular part of the Philippines is a real high crime area, and of course we couldn't bring our guns, so we were well advised to be off the street by midnight, because there were communists there called the Hukalampa, and they would love to kidnap you and kill you. And then there were a lot of criminals, just ordinary criminals. And then the police themselves would shoot you if they found you on the street after midnight, so that was pretty unpleasant. And then I went to Hong Kong. Right before I came home. That was nice. Spent 5 days in Hong Kong. And that was like a culture shock, because Hong Kong was like Manhattan. Here I've been living over in Vietnam, and even the Philippines, the area I was in was the jungle. It wasn't very well built up. But being in Hong Kong was just like being in downtown Manhattan. It was fabulous. Liked it a lot. We flew on C-130s when we flew around the country. It was good.
Did you get any medals or citations for that?
I got the pretty much standard medals they were handed out, which included the Vietnamese Cross of Gallantry and Civic Action Medal. And there was another medal that the Vietnam government gave us too for being there. And I got National Defense, Vietnam Service, 4 battle stars in the Vietnam Service with it, because we actually had a lot of stuff going on over there for the year we were there.
You weren't involved with Lam Son in 71?
No, I was home and out by then. Yeah. But what we actually got involved with toward the time I was getting short was that they had the incursion into Cambodia. So our air wing was flying sorties
all the way down there?
Over there, yeah. They would fly over in the morning, and they would take pictures of, these are F-4 Phantom jets. They would fly over in the morning and take pictures of what was on the ground in Cambodia. And they would fly back, and the officers would go and have lunch, and then they could develop the films, and then we would look at them, and then they'd see what they wanted to bomb. And we'd put it on the record, and we'd do it on our computers, and that was going to get bombed, and they'd go back and bomb it. What really impressed me with that was the fact that a lot of times people, they think the Vietnam War was kind of like running around the jungle and all that, but the Vietnamese army, the North Vietnamese army, the communists had been in Cambodia for years. They weren't supposed to be, but they were. And they had built up tremendous fortifications over there. In fact, when I looked at this, these were concrete revetments with radar-pointed anti-aircraft guns in them, and they looked like Fort Ticonderoga, remember, because I've been to Fort Ticonderoga?
Right.
There's a big star-shaped, it's like, you're scratching your head. It's like they're not living in a bunch of bamboo huts. This is like big stuff. So they would go back and blow that up.
It's T-55 tanks that came through the gate of the American Embassy in 75.
Yeah, they had amphibious tanks, Russian-made amphibious tanks, even earlier than that, up around Dak To and all that. So the North Vietnamese army was a well-equipped army. It wasn't like a bunch of ragtag guerrillas running around loose. So I thought I was going to be short and I was going to come home, but then I was afraid I was going to get extended. But then I didn't. We had one of the hot times we had over there was when Ho Chi Minh died. He was a leader of the communists, and we thought we'd get hit, and we did, but it was only after they buried him, because they probably figured if they hit us before his funeral, we'd blow up their funeral. Up in Hanoi, which probably would have been a bad idea in my opinion. Brezhnev was there, and
Get them all in one shot.
Could have got all. But anyway, we didn't do that. But they launched these rockets and mortars at us, and we got about 350 rocket rounds that night in our compound. It was really made a lot of blew a lot of things up. None of our guys got killed. We had a few guys hit with shrapnel, got wounded, and then an Air Force fellow right across the road, he got killed, and he'd only just gotten country, which is why he got the duty that nobody wanted, which was working the night shift on radar. And so the rocket came in and just blew the whole building. It just blew it right up. And it was a stone building. It was part of the old French installations. We had a lot of stuff that we did over there were based on the old French installations. Our main headquarters base had been a French Foreign Legion camp, and it had old French concrete bunkers. Looked like the beach of Normandy. Those kind of concrete bunkers all over the place. So we had that, and when I first got there, the first 30 days I was there, put us on mess duty, and we had Vietnamese people, like I said, working for us. And this was kind of a shock to me, but we had to give them an armed escort to get them home, because a lot like what goes on in Iraq today. If these people were cooperating with us, they'd be murdered on their way home. So we loaded them up in a 2.5-ton truck, and I got assigned to duty. And where I was, I didn't have my war equipment. I didn't have my rifle, I didn't have my flak jacket, I didn't have my helmet. But the guy loaned it to me. He says, "Here, use mine." I said, "All right, so it all works." So I got on the truck and off we went as the sun was setting, and we drove all around the Da Nang area. And the thing was that this was in July, and by the lunar calendar that the Vietnamese used, it was half New Year's. In other words, it was 6 months into the year, 6 months more to go. So they had big festivals going on in all of their temples. Ordinarily, there was a curfew after dark all around that area. They didn't want anybody moving around because they figured it was the enemy. But that night, they let everybody sleep out at their temples and all this, so there was just loads of people around.
Half Tets or something.
Yeah, it was half tech. So we would drop these people off, and most of them, as I said, were refugees from areas that the communists had overtaken and they're persecuted by. So they lived in these big units that were built by the Seabees and by the Army engineers, and they looked like big motel units, but they were all fortified. You know, they all had barbed wire around them, sandbags, and Vietnamese soldiers guarding them, or us guarding them. You know. So we dropped these people off. We're coming back through Da Nang, and it's all slow going because all the people in the street, well, there's all these little buildings, they're made of concrete buildings, and they're like 1 story high. So all of a sudden, some metallic thing comes flying through the sky and lands in the truck with me, clunk. So I hook my M16, and it's just, the bed of the M16, or the 2.5-ton truck is practically on level with the roof, and I see the movement on the roof, and I go up with the gun, and it's 2 little boys about age 8 or 9. They thought this was a funny thing to do, throw something into the American guy's truck and see what he does. Well, they came about that far from both of them being shot. To this day, I thank God that, you know, nothing happened. So then the truck driver's yelling at me, what was that, what was that? And I look down and it's, well, it's a beer can. So he jolts the truck and I fall down. And the gun didn't go off, the rifle I should say didn't go off then either. So that's one of the things I'm really glad didn't happen, you know. But I can see how, you know, people do wind up, with civilians getting killed in these situations. It's just awful. But anyway. Yeah.
Photographs, is that the one you have?
Yeah, this is what I looked like when I was 22. I look a little different now. Yeah, I don't wear that uniform anymore for one thing, and no mustache. So I grew the mustache when I was over in Vietnam. It was an unwritten rule in the Marine Corps that if you had been to Vietnam, you could have a mustache. But if you hadn't been, you could not show up with a mustache. So, okay?
You keep a diary or anything of your time?
You know, I started doing it and then I let it go. I should have stuck with it, but I didn't. So, yeah. On the other hand, I seem to remember almost every single day I was there with clarity. People, I don't remember what happened in 1978 after I came back, but except my daughter had her second birthday.
After this, did you recall when your service ended? When 2-year service ended?
Yeah, I had myself, I was superstitious enough. I had myself convinced that I wasn't going to come back alive, you know. And as I said, the Cambodian incursion occurred, you know, toward the end of my tour, and I said, "Oh, this is great. I'm going to get extended, and I won't be able to come back and all this." And but I did, thank God. So yeah, they got us all down to the R&R center. And I remember the day I was leaving. I'll never forget this as long as I would. They had us all out on the tarmac to get on board a 707, you know, commercial jetliner. Yeah, so here's a whole hundreds of guys. Some fellas I met who I'd known from Camp Pendleton, but I hadn't seen them for a whole year because they've been in other units. You know, so it was good to see them all back again. You know, one fellow was a musician. He played the clarinet, but he had gotten a Purple Heart over there because right in the middle of them having some kind of a change of command ceremony, where they brought the generals like to have the bands playing. You know, the bad guy said this would be a good time to drop some mortar rounds into the middle of the ceremony, and they did. And he got hit in the kneecap with a piece of shrapnel. Thank God he was okay. Anyway. We're all getting ready to march on that airplane. Believe me, we're really looking forward to getting on the airplane. We really are. And all of a sudden, hold up, everybody stop. So this is July in Vietnam. It's hotter than anything. And the tarmac, it's almost like molasses, you know, it's like melting. So between us and the plane we're going to comes this great big Army NCO with an M16 and a shoulder holster, pistol 45. Big black man, big strong one, comes by and he says, "All right, forward." And with that, I hear some Vietnamese language, right? And there's some Vietnamese, South Vietnamese soldiers. And they got about 200 or 300 prisoners, the enemy, marching across right in front of us, between us and the airplane that's going to get us to go home. And they're all connected with, you know, with...
North Vietnamese?
Yeah, well, some of them were North Vietnamese and some were Viet Cong. And they're all connected with, they're all tied up. You know, well, they weren't tied up, but they just had them connected around the neck, so if anybody ran, they'd be creating 20 other guys with them, so they wouldn't go very far. March them along. Then they had to stop them for some reason, so they all stopped right directly in front of us. So the NCO, the American guy, says to the Vietnamese, he says, and they're all hopping up and down because they're all barefoot, every one of them, and they're hopping up and down on this tar. And they didn't make any move to avoid it because I guess they thought this is American torture. But they all had bundles of their stuff, you know, looked like bags of rags, and even I'm sure it was their valuable possessions. And he says, tell them to put the stuff under their feet so that they won't, you know, they won't burn their feet. So they, oh, okay, they do all of that. And they all look like the sickliest bunch of people I ever saw in my life. They were so skinny, they looked like skeletons, you know. And the Vietnamese have a habit that if they're very nervous, they'll smile. which caused a lot of misconceptions over there, but it's one of their cultural things. So here's all of these people smiling at us, you know, and they look like skulls, you know. And some of the guys with us are cursing them and all this. I wasn't. You know, I'm saying to myself, you know what? This is the most of the enemy I've seen the year I've been here, because we got shot at from places we couldn't see. I said, if you didn't kill me and I didn't kill you, fine, no problem. But some guys were growling at him. But I noticed this one kid, he was about, if he was 16 or 17 as old as he was, and he had a North Vietnamese Army shirt on, you know, khaki shirt. All these guys were dressed in sort of civilian clothes. He was one of the only ones that I noticed was North Vietnamese, and he had little red patches on his collar. I'll never forget this. They told him he could put stuff under his foot. He just stood there at attention. His feet were hurting just like everybody else's. I said to myself, this kid's motivated. You know what I mean? He wasn't going to show any pain or strain, and he was like 16, 17 years old, so I thought to myself, if they got a lot more like him, you know, where he came from, then we got a war on our hands. You know? So we already had a war, but were we going to win it was the question. So I never forgot that. I got on the airplane, flew back. When we landed in Okinawa, we stayed there for a few days. We had a typhoon, which means we couldn't leave the island for a while, and we got stuck. And everybody's anxious to go home. And then I went into the NCO club. You know, this typhoon was like a red alert. You couldn't leave the building you were in. You know, but when it went yellow, you could leave the building you were in, but not the compound. So it went yellow, and I went over to the club. You know, you could have a beer, you could shoot pool, and I did. And this fellow, I'll never forget, I knew him from Camp Pendleton, Padilla. He'd come in. He came in. I hadn't seen him in a year, and he'd been a machine gunner with the 3rd Division, and later the 1st Division, which was pretty tough. But he came back all in one piece, so I was just really happy to see him. And as soon as he came in, it went back to conditioned red, so we had no choice. We had to stay in this bar the whole rest of the day. And we did. But, you know, fortunately, I didn't have to drive. I just had to walk. So. And on the way back, I stopped at Wake Island, of course, which was a famous World War II battlefield, and that was very interesting. And then we went to Hawaii, and they didn't let us show up the plane in Hawaii that time. But again, it was night, so we didn't get to see anything, because they were sure you were going to get back on it. And then got to Camp Pendleton, and after a few days, we got discharged. After the Marine Corps screwed around with us for a little while. They wanted to know that they had you under their thumb right until the last minute. But that's okay. Yeah.
So when you got back, did you go to, when you came back, did you go to work or to school?
I came back, and it's interesting. I had worked for the city of New York. I was a full-time college student, and I had a full-time job at the city of New York, running computers in the Department of Air Pollution Control, and also for the police department. And in those days, if you got drafted for 2 years, or if you enlisted for 2 years, your employer had to hold your job. But I had no particular interest in working in computers. I didn't really like it. You know, it wasn't what I wanted to do. And meanwhile, my family had a summer house up here in Palinville since I was in high school. In 1964, the year I graduated high school, I bought this little house. We still have it. And so I had originally intended to be a teacher, because I majored in history in college and I minored in education. And after I came back from Vietnam, I wanted to do something different. You know, I don't think I mentioned that I joined the Marine Corps for a couple of reasons, one of which I was looking for adventure. You know, I mean, it was silly, but I was. And I still kind of wanted to do something that was different from just, let's say, teaching. There's nothing wrong with teaching. In fact, I got a chance to do something I like a lot. But anyway, my cousin had been teaching for a while too, and now he became a parole officer. So I thought that might be interesting. And then instead of staying in the city, I had nothing keeping me there, so I started living up here in Thalmaville. And my grandmother came up. She loved it because she was a country girl from Ireland originally. Economic factors had forced her to live in the city, you know, when she immigrated over here, but she really loved the country. So I had it pretty much made, you know, I had this nice grandma, you know, was like a maid, and so I was living a pretty easy life. And but I had to get a job. I had to get a job. So I met a fellow up here who was the director of probation in Greene County, who was a former Marine, by the way. In case you haven't heard, Marines are like, you know, thick as fleas, you know. So anyway, he introduced me around to the directors of probation within an hour traveling. And a guy named Ray Connolly, God be good to him, he's just passed away. He hired me over in Dutchess, so I went into that career. And that was it. I got out of the city. I went into now I work for parole, and so that's what I did. I've worked in that same kind of business now for 35 years. I started working for parole in 1984. But I did go to college after that again. I got my master's degree, and I got it through the GI Bill, which was quite nice. I should have started the program earlier. But because the GI Bill kind of ran out before I got the program done, because I started 10 years after I got out of it.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it ran out. But on the other hand, the program was through Fordham University. It was strictly for probation officers and parole officers, federal and state and county. And the program didn't even really exist, you know, no time. But so I got that, and that was good.
Did you ever keep in contact with anybody that you were in Vietnam?
I stayed friendly with a guy who was in Camp Lejeune with me. I wasn't in Vietnam with him, and he was down in New Jersey, and he became a DEA agent after he got out. He was a federal narcotics enforcement agent, and then he got out of that. Now he's in private security. He's making money like that. Nice guy, and occasionally we will get together and meet. Because he lives in Jersey. Last time we met, we went to West Point and went to the museum there and had lunch at the Hotel Thayer, which is very nice. So it's kind of good. And there was another fellow named Denny who was born the same day I was, January 18th, 1947. And he lived in Orange County, and I used to correspond with him. And we all visited each other a couple of times, but over the last several years, not so much.
Well, of course, veterans organizations.
Yeah, I actually wound up joining the American Legion almost immediately after I got back from Vietnam. My father belonged to the post up in Palenville, which has since gone under, and there was a little bar up there that he used to go to. So almost as soon as I got home, my father took me into the bar to have a drink, and the guy that owned the place immediately signed me up for the Legion because he was a World War II veteran. He'd served on the B-25s and B-24s over in the Pacific. So I got like 35 years in the Legion, which is, I'm not that old. I'm old, but I'm not that old. So joined the Legion right away. I joined the VFW here in Saugerties probably 20 years ago. I'm not real active with that. And I was a charter member of the Vietnam Veterans Chapter 60 here in Ulster County, but I haven't been active with them. Yeah. And I also belong to the Marine Corps League. I joined that in Kingston. Yeah.
So did you ever have any reunions? Did you ever attend?
No, not really. No. We had kind of an informal reunion after all of us had got back from Vietnam and knew each other from Camp Lejeune. We met in a hotel down in the city and had a wild evening in Manhattan, but that was pretty much it. One fellow I was in Vietnam with was from New Jersey, and I did go over and visit him after I came back. His family had a resort down there in Seaside Heights. We had a wonderful time. And the reason was because when I came back, I was a sergeant, and he was a corporal, and we were able to ship more of our stuff back. And he bought a bunch of Hong Kong tailor clothing, which was, so I mailed it to me, and then I drove it down to New Jersey for him. So we had a good time, but I haven't seen him in a while, like 35 years.
Any of your any experiences affect your life?
I would say that, as I said, I was probably going to be a teacher, and I haven't been in the Marine Corps and doing what I did over there, and that I got more interested in law enforcement. So that certainly was a change. I don't think if I'd gone to the Marines, I would have done anything to teach. And I have had a chance to teach since, kind of as a side job for like Sage colleges and like that. History I'm very interested in, sociology, that type of thing. Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add to experience?
I just, when we came back from Vietnam, those of us who did come back, the country was really opposed to us personally. I mean, it wasn't just a question of they weren't crazy about the Vietnam War. I mean, they thought we were a bunch of barbarians, and we were told like to shut up, which is very unhealthy. It really is. People need to talk these things out. In fact, we had this incident down in the mall here where this guy was shooting a gun off, and my wife and my daughter were there. I said to my daughter, who's a teacher herself, I said, it's a good idea for you to talk this out with people, especially people who've had the same experience. Right. That's how you get rid of it. That's how you get it out. So a lot of us clammed up, for a long time, and it had some terrible effects on some people. I mean, there were two fellows I knew who committed suicide. Now, that's also a stereotype that people say, oh, more Vietnam vets committed suicide and were killed in action. That's a bunch of baloney. It's just not true. But it was all part of the stereotype that they laid on us. And I don't think this country should ever do that again to people who serve. I had it relatively easy, so I'm not even whining about myself. But the reality is that some people had it very tough. And forget about if you don't particularly care about the war. We have to respect the people who are putting their lives on the line for doing it. So I really don't think we'll necessarily ever go through that again. But to this day, I'll be honest, I blame the media. I really do. I think the media really slandered people who had served their country like they had never done in any other war. And I think if the media could do it to this generation of people who were fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, they would. In fact, I think they've done what they could to try and make them look as bad as possible. So I think people have to be aware of that and keep their eyes open, because I think there's some politicians and people in the media who have an agenda.
9/11, I think, made us a little more aware of things.
I would hope so. I would hope it would wake people up. So what it taught me was that we really have it good in this country. We really, really do. I mean, when I got over to Okinawa and places like that, and so that people actually lived in huts, you know, made out of woven bamboo and grass. You know, I mean, I'd seen it on TV. I'd been to college, you know, I knew it existed. But when you're there personally, you see it, and how little these people had, next to nothing, and how everything had value to them. You know, if we had an orange and we peeled, this actually happened. I had an orange and I peeled the orange, or I threw the peel out on the ground. A little old man came up and picked it up. I said, "What do you do with that?" He says, "Chop, chop." He's going to eat it. So I said, "Yeah, no, here, have some real oranges."
Yeah.
But everything has, you know, I mean, just the smallest thing. Who would eat an orange peel? Why would you want to do that? You know, so it taught me that, you know, we're really beneficial.
Yes, you do.
And it also opened my eyes about communism. You know, there were a lot of people in academia that thought, oh, that was the great utopia for people. It's not evil. It's evil. It's a terrible situation. It's you know, the communists took over Vietnam. They started murdering people by the dozens. You know, they made concentration camps. You know, when Pol Pot's regime took over, you know, now a lot of people in academia today say, well, they weren't real communists. Well, they thought they were real communists when they were out there in the killing fields carrying out the Holocaust against people they didn't agree with. And communist countries have always been like that. It's the way North Korea is today. You know, it's the way a lot of Red China is, in my opinion. So I don't think we ought to go out fighting the whole world, but we ought to be aware of the fact that there are evil people out there, and a lot of them rule vast numbers of folks. I was happy to see the Iraq elections turn out nice. It'd be interesting to see if they had an election in Vietnam, whether the people would elect a communist today.
Yeah.
I doubt it. So, yeah, I got my opinions.
Okay, Bill.